Hello everybody, bit of a different video today. It's not necessarily about the usual predators that I talk about, but it's a relation to it. I'm here with Adam as well. Hello Adam.
Hi Andy, hi everyone.
It's been a while since we've done a video, but this is a case that we both took a lot of interest in. Just for those in the US may not be too familiar with this. I know it was all over the world, but obviously in England the focus has been a lot stronger. So a little Liverpudlian boy of 2 in the very early 90s was abducted and brutally murdered by the two people you can see here, John Venables and Robert Thompson. I read quite a lot of books over the years about it, and watched every documentary that's ever been released. And what they did, I'm not going to go into any detail, obviously, but what they did to this lad is beyond horrendous. I read a book that his father wrote once, and there was a section in that his uncle wrote because he identified the body, and they had nightmares that nightmares that I've never had in my life before that night. It was horrendous.
Well, I think we'll be taking a much more somber approach to this than our normal videos, where there's at least sort of a bit of humour, but there's just nothing.
No, there's no having a laugh at silly people bundling around in this video. So for anybody with that's not that way inclined, that's
or nervous disposition.
Yeah, that's in for just a fun-filled evening. Maybe listen to this another time. But yeah,
it was something I was thinking about though. Actually, weirdly, it's the one case. Like even, I can happily make jokes about Princess Diana, 9/11,
really?
7/7. Yeah, even the Maddie McCann thing. Like this, I guess with that, because it's still speculation as to what really happened. So, and it's like that thing that we said a long time ago about Lorne and tragedy plus time equals comedy. But this is one case that I don't think you could ever find there's any kind of humor or anything.
It's a good point that, because for all the years, there's never once, and I've never really thought about it. There's not once been a joke made about it or anything. Not once have I heard. And sometimes at work, I work in a environment where there's lots of sick jokes going around, and not once have you heard anything about this. I think that means that there's always. This is what makes this particular case so horrendous. In the UK, and I'm not trying to say that America is worse than England, but there's not many cases like this in the UK. I know that there are other cases like this in America because I've read about them, but in England it was unprecedented. We had these two boys were 10 and they murdered, brutally tortured this little lad and left his body on a railway track. It's horrendous.
It's shocking because it's kids on kids.
Yes, and people couldn't get their head around it. But the reason we wanted to do this video, and what makes it very, very interesting, is because there's a lot of legalities that have come since this, from this case, that have upset a lot of people and stirred a lot of debate. Just for a bit of brief background, what happened was these two guys were found guilty of murder, and they were only sentenced to 8 years in a young offenders like a secure institute. They were both released. I can't remember the exact age, but they were in the late teens, maybe 18, 19.
They would have been 18 when they were released.
Under anonymity. I can never say that word. Have I said it right?
Anonymity.
I understand why, but they've still got that anonymity to date. Thompson has been off the radar. Nobody's heard shit from him. There's speculation out there. There's a stable gay relationship. He's not reoffended.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. John Venables has been arrested for cocaine, been arrested for a fray. And
a fray's like fighting, right?
Yeah, it's like a
scuffle.
Just basically. And about 6-7 years ago, he was arrested because his probation officer found indecent images on his computer, quite a lot of them. I think he was given 2 years. Now, 2 weeks ago, or even I think it was last week actually.
Yeah, it was very recently.
Which was on round about the day that it was the 25th anniversary of James's death, I believe.
That'd be tomorrow because it was Valentine's Day.
Oh, was it? Right, it was.
Yeah.
It was. Oh, right. It was. There was some kind of anniversary. It was round that. Anyway, it's round the mark of the the anniversary. I think there was different dates. There was like the date he went missing, the date he died, and the date his funeral, that kind of. But anyway, it was on some kind of landmark date. Venables admitted possessing over 1,000 child pornography images and got sentenced to only another 3 years, I believe. 300 of those photographs were Category A. In England, they are the worst kind of child porn images. They're depicting children as young as 6 being sexually abused. As I'm saying this now, it's really harrowing. But there was also a manual that he was in possession of, which was an instruction manual, which just fucking baffles me.
It's known on the dark web as the paedophile's manual, isn't it? I believe, or that's what the papers were saying. I mean, it's got a completely sort of a title that you wouldn't realise from what I read in the papers. But yeah, they described this book as being the paedophile's manual.
Suffice to say, it's maybe the darkest book in existence, apart from the Disaster Artist, maybe.
The Disaster Artist is a brilliant.
I know it's brilliant. I was just trying to. I know we said we weren't any humour, but just the odd bit of lightheartedness. I'm currently a quarter of the way through that book, and I'm loving every page of it. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time.
I devoured that book in 2 days. I think.
It's the first page had me in stitches. Like that, we're in that restaurant, and Tommy Wiseau's trying to blag it, saying that he's someone else to get in that table. It's it's just so funny. Anyway.
But yeah, that's a bit off topic, but something a bit nicer to think about.
Yeah. So yeah, this book. It's suffice to say, anybody that's in possession of that, some harsh measures are certainly in order. Now, the thing what's happening at the moment is there's a lot of debate and controversy in England because Venables still got his anonymity. So when he gets let's say he gets released in 3 years. He won't be known as who he is and what he did. So a regular sex offender will be on the register and people will be aware of him. I suppose it could still be the case with his new identity. But so that I think it's the anonymity thing that's one of the more controversial aspects of this, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah, well, it was quite odd at the time of the case because the judge, in the original hearings, they weren't. For people that young, a lot of people were surprised that they used their real names and photos and everything. But then they gave them this, new identifications and new lives. They could be living next door to you, which is quite worrying and quite odd that when they're 10 they don't get protected, but now they're 18 they do. I mean, from what I've heard, and I don't want to sort of fall into propaganda and that kind of thing, because I know obviously what they did is absolutely twisted and disgusting, but a lot of people are saying like they were treated much better than the other kind of delinquents in these juvenile centres they were in. They were given all the perks and privileges, and a lot of people were very unhappy about that, that they're sitting in these warm rooms with TVs and Super Nintendos. But yeah, it's an odd thing that they now have anonymity, which they weren't given during the time of the trial.
Yeah, I understand why they had to do it, and I still understand to this day. Back then, if they'd have been released and not given anonymity, there'd have been no point having him incarcerated and then releasing him in the first place. They would have been killed.
Dead by now, probably, though.
Sorry?
They'd be dead by now. Some vigilante would have killed them by now if they hadn't been given that order.
Yeah, and some people would say that's fair justice. And from one perspective, you find it very difficult to disagree with that if you look at it from the perspective of the little fella you can see at the middle of the screen. Someone who never had a chance to grow up and was, well, you don't need me to say it, but anybody knows. So, from one perspective, you'd say fair game. From another, you would say that let's look at it from the people of keeping peace within the area and trying to keep a civilized society. You don't want people being overcome by anger and then getting sent down for murdering these pieces of shit.
But if you were having a drink at a bar and this guy turned around and told you, "Oh, I was that guy," I don't think I'd be able to help myself from at least giving him quite a severe beating.
Exactly, yeah. So it would normal people, normal good people, could in turn become monsters, having been faced with that. So we understand why they had to do it. The thing that doesn't seem to get addressed is much. Well, it does in some circles, but one thing that the justice system just seems to be missing completely is their feelings towards the consideration towards the parents and the family of James Bulger, because these boys have not really been punished in the traditional sense.
Oh no! I mean, the thing, I don't care how old you are. If you could, that's like, if you can commit a crime of an adult, then you should do the time of an adult. In my opinion, they should be locked up forever. That's the only way you keep them safe and they get the punishment they deserve. And no TVs or PlayStation or anything. They get locked up. They get an hour of daylight, like a proper prisoner in a maximum security prison, and that's the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I mean that would be one solution, because there doesn't seem to be a foolproof solution here. You've got to try. I understand the rehabilitation thing, putting aside these naive do-gooders that really fucking infuriate me. But, you've got to have a society that gives people the opportunity to rehabilitate, even from murder. It has happened when there's been murderers before and people have, become enlightened and had a shift in consciousness.
I think,
but this is a bit different.
Dictates a lot of how it should go, though. I mean, that's what they did was pure evil. I mean, okay, let's say you drink drive and you hit someone with your car. Okay, it's a shitty thing to do, a really shitty thing to do, but you can go to prison, do your time, and come out rehabilitated and never drink drive again. It's still at the core essence an accident. What these boys did was no kind of accident. I mean, it was premeditated.
Oh, of course it was. It was, they tried to abduct another child. It was just for the circumstances, for anybody that doesn't know. And there's plenty of, you just type it in on YouTube, there's loads of really good documentaries. But he was abducted from a shopping centre. His mum went inside the butcher's shop, left him outside for only a few seconds, and these two took him by the hand, took him out onto the street, and then took him on about a 3-hour ordeal along the canal and left him by the railway track and subjected him to beatings. It was a long process. It wasn't just a quick thing. Premeditated. It was horrific. It doesn't get much worse. But there are cases very similar in nature that have happened in the US, which we'll talk about shortly. But so, if you look at what happened to them, when I was saying they didn't seem to have been punished, like you've said, they were put in a secure unit. They were taken on trips. They were taken on holidays. They were given education. They were given entertainment. They had a better life than what they would have done if they had have stayed with their parents and not been punished at all.
Yeah, probably. I mean, because they both. I'm trying to word this carefully, but they weren't from well-to-do backgrounds. There is in the case of Thompson, it was quite well known there was abuse within his family. Although with Venables, they said it was a fairly normal family. But yeah, I mean, the government probably had a lot more money to fund their growing up than their own families would have done.
Yeah, I think what you were getting at when
they would have been lynched if they were let out at 10. They still would have been lynched. There's that video clip with the people shouting "Get 'em out! Get 'em out!" when they go past in the van.
Yeah, they would have been killed. There's no doubt about it. It was kind of a sad reflection on society as well.
But I don't care if they're 10 years old. They must have evil inside them to be able to do something like that.
There's something that we don't understand in those kids, and I think that's the thing that frightens people the most. They cannot understand why this had happened, and that's why there were such terrible scenes when they used decoy vans. There weren't even people in those vans when you see the footage.
Wow.
So that just makes it even more like you're thinking, Jesus Christ, there's just people going crazy. But sort of getting back to the not being punished, there was a clip with James's mother that said when she found out the sentence, because initially they were given something like 5 years, and then they got it marked up to 15, and then it got reduced to 8, and each time that happened, the mother said it was like James had been killed all over again, or words to that effect. In other words, she had to suffer the pain consistently. It's like she was being tortured by the very system that's supposed to protect people like her. Now, I do understand that there's no easy solution, but these people who are responsible for these decisions should hang their heads in fucking shame, in my opinion, because the primary people that should be held have been held high regard over anybody else. James is dead, would have been then the family. So what do? I don't think anyone from James's family, and they never said this, they don't want them killed, they didn't want them hung up, they wanted him incarcerated for a very long time and wanted them to be punished. Now, what's wrong with that? Clearly it's not worked with Venables. We don't know what's happened with Thompson, but Venables has gone on to have in his possession this how to assault children sexually manual. It's one of the worst things that human race has probably ever fucking concocted. And, he's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. Why else would you have that manual if you're not planning something? And 3 years for getting caught with something like that is ridiculous. And you think, sorry, now I'm just going to get a bit on my high horse here.
Oh, don't worry, I think it's inevitable talking about this.
Well, someone can go to jail for possession of a Class A drug for longer than that. Literally someone that just wants to have a fun night out, take a pill or do a few lines or something, and they end up in jail for 10 years. And this guy's fucking planning to rape a kid. I don't care if he's done it or not. He's got the book that says how to do it. That deserves a lot longer than, robbing a bank even.
I totally agree. I think it's fair to say, and anybody with a brain would agree that's in the UK or knows anything about it, the judicial system in the UK is shameful at best. It is fucking ludicrous. In the US, it's not perfect because, we watch all the documentaries about people. I mean, you only have to look at our friend bloody Stephen Avery to figure that one out. Yeah. But the good thing about the US justice system is if you commit a crime over there, you fucked. And you go down for the time that you should do in some cases. It seems to be one extreme to the other. In America, it seems they're too harsh with certain people. And in the UK, it's too much the other way. But the good thing about the US justice system is if you do something, if those two kids had done that in America, they'd still be incarcerated now. That is a fact. Because there was a 13-year-old boy, can't remember his name, who killed a young toddler. Only 6 months after this happened in the US, he's still incarcerated now. He was 13 at the time.
Oh, I think I saw a documentary about him. It was like Teenage Lifer.
Yeah, he was like, he had red hair and glasses. I can't remember.
Maybe it wasn't the same one. But yeah. I mean, to get 8 years for doing the most despicable thing possible, like unprovoked, taking a toddler that can't really defend themselves, can only has been able to walk and talk a little while. You're
struggling to. Eric Smith was the name of the murderer, and he murdered 4-year-old Derek Roby in 1988. In 93. Apologies. He was born in 88. He's still incarcerated now, and there's no guarantee he'll ever be released. Now, if you lock someone up, right, forever, what you're doing is you're giving them the rest of their life to contemplate on what they've done, and they've no other way of dealing with what they've done. It's the perfect punishment for me. Letting these two out, they should have been It's a strange thing because there's some children's psychologists that will say that at 10 years old your brain's not fully developed, which is physically true, and therefore you can't be held accountable for their actions. There is an American campaigner that campaigned to have these sentences quashed because they said that Venables and Thompson got trialed as adults, but haven't they committed an offence that
should be tried? Yeah,
should be tried as adult. If you've got enough about you to torture a toddler and then run around after it and say, "Well, we're children," I would say that's bullshit.
Yeah. Well, at 10, you know right from wrong, and inflicting that kind of pain on someone for your own entertainment, there's nothing right about that. There's no coming back from that. There's no excuse for it. If they were my kids, if I had a kid and he grew up and he did something like that, well, I'd disown him at the very least. Like, I don't want anything to do with you. You're not my seed if you've got evil, if you're capable of such evil.
Just to give a bit more of a harrowing echo to it, if it ever could be, only minutes after they'd left his body on the railroad track to try, what they did is they put his body on the track of the railway to make it look like it was an accident and they got run over by a train.
He'd been hit by a train.
And his body got severed in half. Only minutes after that, they went to the video store to get a dollar a pound back for a video that they needed to take back, and the people in the store said it looked like they just had a normal day. Only a few minutes after, just gives a perspective on the sort of mentality. Now, one thing that a lot of people seem to forget, and is probably the most important aspect of the whole thing, is that what you've got to remember about these two, you shouldn't necessarily, because all we've done is vilify them so far. There is a very important aspect, and people might criticise me for this, and I get it. Thompson and Venables, the reason people went crazy is because they were like a mirror to society in Britain at the time. Now, what I'm not trying to say is that we've created murderers that should do this, but they are the product of a very low socio-economic background in Liverpool at the time, which has some of the most deprived areas in Britain. They were both part of dysfunctional families. They both had, they weren't from married families. Thompson, I think, was part of 7 children. He got neglected. He saw his mum beaten up. What I'm trying to say is they both had traumatic upbringings. They were both doing poorly at school. They weren't being, they were both the sort of consequence of some cases poor education. What I'm trying to say is, you cannot vilify them and say, right, they're evil, let's just dismiss them as being evil, throw away the key and move on to the next ones. They held a mirror up to Britain at the time.
I would disagree with that to an extent, though. Like, plenty of people can come from broken homes and still have good lives.
Of course they do. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that people like that it's excused, but what I'm trying to say is they are a product of their upbringing. There is something in them that has made them specifically evil. But what I'm trying to say is, let's just say there's questions here that cannot be answered about the deeper human.
I don't agree, because I think they must have been born to commit such an evil act. They must have been born with something inside them that most of us aren't.
But this is the thing, right? And this is why I thought it'd be interesting to do this video. I don't have the answers, of course. We're just having a chat. There is something different about these two that made them do that. Of course, there are millions of people in the world that come from poor backgrounds that become some of the nicest people you've ever met, and all that come from humble backgrounds, of course. But what I'm trying to say is, nobody in the deepest essence is inherently evil. It just isn't.
We've discussed this before.
It isn't the case, right? People disagree, fair enough. There is something different about these two. They might have, the brains might be wired wrong, but what I'm trying to say, it was a certain set of circumstances that led them to do this. Should they be punished and incarcerated permanently? Yes, I think they should have done. They should never be allowed out. But what I'm trying to say is, you cannot dismiss them as just being evil and then move on. Do you understand what I'm getting at? You have to understand what has created these monsters.
Yeah, but even at 10, they should be able to take responsibility for their own actions.
But I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying they shouldn't. What I'm trying to say is it held a mirror up for Britain. People got so angry because people like this are allowed to exist. What they did is beyond comprehension. Nobody... It's still... What I'm trying to say is there's questions we can't answer. We don't understand the deeper human need, and if you want to call it a soul, a person has a soul. What is it that makes you evil? What is it that makes you bad? What is it that made these two do what they did? What I'm trying to say is, if these two had been brought up, if these two people had been born to the same mothers, to different mothers, but they were the same children, would they have done what they did?
Yeah, personally, I think
I don't.
they probably would have done.
I don't.
I think it depends, though. Maybe they, it's very different, their crime, to, let's say, try and draw a comparison with something. Okay, let's say a 6-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid has a baby sister that's 3 or 4 that really, really gets on his nerves. One day he gets a bit too angry with her, pushes her, she falls down the stair and dies because the parents neglected them or haven't. That is not... that's a bad and terrible thing to do, and that would have happened. That's not like abducting a child, putting him through torture, and then trying to cover it up by making it look like a train's hit him, and then going on about your fucking day as if nothing's happened. And those two little shits, when I heard the police interviews, and they're both trying to pin it on each other, and they're like, oh, he did this and did that. Like, I don't care... if your mate suggests to do something like that, like, they were both in on this plan. They both, like, if your mate says, oh, why don't we go and grab a kid? And that's they keep referring to him as the baby as well.
I know, it's horrible, that, isn't it? Ugh. Did you know Thompson put a flower on James's memorial?
Yes.
Before he got arrested?
Yeah. That's evil. That's not.
The thing is, though, Adam, I'm not disagreeing with anything you've just said there. I don't know whether I'm conveying my point accurately. I'm trying to say it's very important that you don't just dismiss them as being evil and freaks that would have happened in any situation, because I don't believe it would. Of course, you can never account for this. You can't necessarily blame the parents.
Those two would have always been capable of it, perhaps with different backgrounds, stricter parents, more attentive parents, different parents, more money, any of those situations, perhaps because they would have been too afraid of the consequences, but they always would have had those desires.
So where does this desire come from? Are you saying it's genetic? Are you saying it's something that you inherently...
Have you ever met anyone in your life or associated with anyone that you would even think would be capable of something like that?
Of murder?
Yeah, well, yeah, but of such a sort of callous murder.
I don't... There was someone at my school in my year who looked incredibly like John Venables, and he was pure, and I'm not just saying this, he was pure wicked, and the shit he used to do at school, he was just defied any kind of logic.
I bet you didn't go near him and had no interest in being his mate.
Oh, of course, yeah. Even to this day, makes me skin crawl thinking about him. I think he's inside now, but yeah, I mean, obviously, you never think, oh, I wonder if this person would kill a child. Because let's look at this logically, right? In the human race, there's probably nothing worse that a person can do than do what they did. To torture and kill a child in that way, it doesn't get any worse. As a human being, and where we're up to now as a species, to think that somebody can do that to one of our young, it's a human-created thing that we can torture someone and get pleasure from it. Now, we all like a bit of schadenfreude, don't we? We all sometimes take pleasure in other people's misfortune. So it's a part of the human condition to laugh and even get pleasure at someone else's, in some cases, misery, and we do it with Lorne. This takes that to a dark and sinister place that nobody wants to think about.
Well, now, I think the characters involved in this, even if they were kids, are very different. I don't think Lorne is inherently evil. I think he's just...
But you think these two are?
Yeah.
So you think they were born this way, and that no matter what happened to them during their life, they would have committed this or a similar
Not
offence?
this exact crime, but they would have done some dark stuff. They might have grown up in more fear or more comfortable lifestyle, and then hidden their things more wickedly, got away with things because they were older and smarter. They just, I don't know. It's just beyond me to even kind of comprehend how they could do this, and it comes, and I say it was premeditated. Whether it was premeditated or not, like at any point you find yourself with a toddler, then you just try and return it to its mum. You don't fucking take it off and.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm not disagreeing. I can't disagree with anything you've said, Adam. I suppose the difference between me and you is, I truly don't believe that anybody in their deepest core is evil. As a being, that's not the nature of consciousness. There are certain people within...
But doesn't that make it worse? That then that means they've chosen to do this. Well,
in some respects, of course, but this is the thing about our current status as human beings. From one perspective, we have the decision to do and make choices and do the right thing. From one perspective, we have free will. From another perspective, we don't have free will, because we're all programmed and conditioned to act and behave a certain way. And of course, they've not been programmed and conditioned to murder, but in some respects, what I'm trying to say is it's very... What is this free will? They clearly knew what they were doing and knew it was wrong, but where do you draw the line of that how much free will do they actually have? Do you understand what I'm getting at? Because people act and behave a certain way because that's all they're used to. As human beings in society, we're all most of us we're starting to get a bit more aware now. We're starting to figure things out, but generally, people are fucking idiots. Programmed, conditioned idiots. They run around going, I must go to KFC, I must buy a new smartphone, I will watch Netflix and feed my mind with bullshit, oh, I must buy a new BMW. That's the way we are as human beings.
I love KFC and I've owned 2 BMWs.
Well, there you go. Case in point, Mr. Adam. No, but do you get where I'm coming from? It's like... Of course, there are some people who are listening to this that are probably want to throw me on a bonfire, saying, "How dare you say this? These people knew what they were doing."
I'm not really sure what you're saying. Whether you're saying this is out of free will or whether they were conditioned to do this, like this was always going to happen because society's that terrible. But you have to. I think everyone has to have a bit more of a introverted or existentialist view of themselves. Like the parents, they should be teaching them right from wrong, and but you can't say this is a failing of their parents.
I didn't say it was. It's like a perfect storm is a really terrible way of putting it. But what I'm trying to say is all the ingredients that came together to make this happen were all a consequence of various things, just like when we say about Lorne and what he did. So you've got the poor upbringing from the parents.
What Lorne tried to do was fuck a 13-year-old, which was stupid, but I don't think he ever intended to kill or hurt anyone.
No, he didn't, but the only reason I drew that comparison is because we've mulled over trying to figure out why Lorne did what he did and what made him to become the person he was. And it was like a perfect storm of circumstances that led him down the path of where he got busted.
Well, no, it could have easily been avoided, but he's just a fucking twat, which is what makes him so entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. In this case, you've got these set of circumstances of being born into dysfunctional families, coming from a poorer area, maybe not feeling love. Thompson's teacher said he just craved attention, he never got it from anybody, and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot. We could talk for ages about what's gone on. What I'm trying to say is there's all these things that came together that fed this anger, this horrible anger that they've got, and cruel nature. Children can be sometimes very cruel. I myself did things when I was a kid like chopping worms up and think, what was I doing? Even Prince Harry got caught, didn't he, by the paper and snapped him chopping a worm up and that. And but what I'm trying to say is, children can be very cruel, can't they?
Kids can be cruel. We can. Thanks, Mom.
Exactly, yeah. But it's true but this takes that to a different level, doesn't it? I don't know what it is, but like some of the things.
Yeah, but there's a difference growing up. You know, I won't deny I did things I'm not proud of as a kid. Perhaps participated in the odd bit of. Well, I was never a ringleader, but I watched the odd bit of bullying and never stopped it, and maybe even took some pleasure in it, which I'm not proud about. Yeah. But that's a bit different.
But it's the same part of the human condition, isn't it? It's the same. What I'm trying to say. My whole point is, let's not. These people that go, oh, kill them, let's fucking hang them. Yeah, I couldn't get it. But that, what problem are we solving there?
No, but you know, there's difference between enjoying someone putting water in Sam's boots and watching him come out of the changing rooms with wet shoes, to fucking taking a child and, you know, abusing it.
Of course there is. There's a huge difference. Yeah, so anyway, we've been going on for quite a bit about this. I'm gonna have to
one thing I wanted to ask you about before we finish, though, as well, like just a reflection on the actual, because we've both watched a lot of documentaries about it over the last couple of days and beforehand, and that they said that Thompson was the ringleader, and he seemed the far more cocky in those interviews, and yet it's Venables that's been repeatedly caught. Do you have any idea? Trouble is, it's so harrowing to think about, but at the same time, I'm kind of curious about what actually went on, but I don't really want to relive the events, if that makes sense.
Oh, I had this horrible dream the other night. I watched a documentary. Which one was it now? I think it was called A Father's Story, and it was Ralph, who's James's father.
Yeah.
And it was about 45 minutes long, and it spoke about it's very interesting. I advise you all to watch it if you can take stuff like that, but good God, it's harrowing. It's how he coped and how he dealt with the feelings of pure hatred that he had. And I had this fucking dream that night that there was a videotape of the murder that had been released, and I saw it, and it was actually like there'd been footage of it actually happening, and it was anyway, as I understand it from watching these documentaries, it was Thompson that was kind of the ringleader. In the police interviews, Thompson never admitted any involvement in the murder. He only admitted he was there. He said it was all Venables. Venables actually said he had participated in the beating of James, but that I think it was Thompson that did the fatal blow to James to end his life. I don't think anybody can come up with a conclusive answer, because if you look on the footage of them walking through the shopping centre, I believe it's Venables that's got him by the hand and he's leading him away, and Thompson stood in front of him, which may suggest Thompson's gone, you do it. Or it could have been another way that said, I'm the ringleader, Venables, I'm doing it, and he took him. So I don't think anybody can conclusively, from what I've seen, Thompson was the ringleader. Obviously Venables is the one that is a paedophile. Is he a paedophile? Because this is another thing we don't fully understand. Paedophiles have existed for thousands of years. We don't understand exactly what creates them 100%. We can't 100% say it. It's a part of human nature, and we will never find the answer to everything about human nature on a scientific level. But obviously there was a sexual element to James's murder, unfortunately. Not a huge one, but I don't want to go into it, but I've read about it in the books. So there was that element of it. Has that created a bit of a catalyst for what Venables has become, or did that exist at the age of 10?
Yeah, I think it must have existed. I don't really know much about that, and I know that he was found without his clothes on, though. Yeah,
like I said, I'm certainly not going to mention anything in this video.
I don't really want to.
No, I like it was, it was horrible. But let's just say that the things that they did were unspeakable. As I'm saying it now, me thinking, me saying all this about it, they held a mirror up, but starting to believe that less and less. I will always believe that there is an element of that, though. You can't.
No, the things they did were pure.
No, but do you understand where I'm coming from, Adam? What I'm trying to say is you can't. They are, every person to some degree, right, is a product of their upbringing. No one's brought up to be, well, I'm sure there are some people somewhere in the world that are brought up to be terrible people. They weren't brought up to be terrible people. The parents didn't go, right, son, go and kill that little kid. That didn't happen.
No.
But people that maybe suffer neglect at a certain time in their life, at a certain key point of development, and they see a bad movie, and they see this, and they see that, and they get beaten round the head at this point, and then they get, so you've got a lack of love, you've got a lack of respect, you've got no growth, you've got no outlet for your creativity, you've got all these things. What does that create? So let's just say, right, let's say that let's try and go down this route with what I was trying to stress. Let's say that a prince, someone of really great moral, great high bloodline, was adopted and given to a family of known paedophiles to be raised. This is a horrible thought, this. I'm sorry I'm going down this route. But let's just say, without going into details, that this kid from a high bloodline is given the worst family in the world that are all terrible people, sex offenders, and raised, beaten round the clock, left, right and centre, daily basis. What would that person become? Is there a high probability that that person would then commit offences?
Yeah, there's a higher probability than someone that's not been raised in that circumstance.
But would that person, it doesn't necessarily mean that person will become bad, but there's a higher probability, isn't there? There are some people in Venable and Thompson's circumstances that go to be good people and not do anything, maybe. But what I'm trying to say is, if you subject any person to certain things at certain points, they will become evil.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's...
So what's the difference? So
they are evil, and they should be locked up for the rest of their lives.
My sort of, if it was up to me, and obviously,
they should be locked up. People like that have done something like that don't deserve any kind of human interaction with anyone else. That should be their punishment. They should be locked up in solitary. Also, it means that they won't die, but they should be forced to live alone with no one and contemplate what they did.
Even when they did it at 10?
Yeah, I don't care they did it at 10.
No, that's fair enough. To be fair, I don't know. I'm not sure. If it was up to me now...
Well, there's a reason they were tried as adults, and there's a reason that 10 was the age. And I know people say, oh, well, that's a bit backwards of England, that at 10 years old you can be tried as an adult. But you do an adult crime at 10 years old, then you get tried as an adult.
So I personally believe Venable should never be allowed out of prison. I don't think he should be killed. I think, like you said, he should be put in a cell in solitary for the rest of his life, given a few meals a day and a copy of the Bible. And they should give him a piece of paper and
the option. He can have the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or whatever the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, of course. I didn't mean that to be like anti-religious or whatever floats your boat. But a few religious texts, a couple of spiritual books, maybe, and a pad and a pen of paper, and then you can write your feelings down and leave it at that. And then that would be my view. You're not that isn't inhumane. His basic needs are being met: food, shelter, water.
If you do the most inhumane act you can do to someone, I think that's the most humane punishment you can give.
Yes, and I think it stands to reason, because what you're doing is you're giving them the chance for enlightenment. You're saying, right, it's up to you now what happens to you. We're not going to torture you. We're going to fucking leave you here. Make sure you get food and water. There's a piece of paper. There's a book. See you later. And just leave it at that. That's personally what I think should happen. But this is an interesting question, right? Adam, let's say that me and you are given omnipotence, and we both pray that'll happen one day. What would you do to Thompson now? He's not reoffended, and he apparently he's married. He's he's in a gay marriage apparently, and this is just what we've heard. I don't know how much truth there is in it. He's in a gay marriage, or at least a gay stable relationship. He's never reoffended, and yeah. So what would you do now if you had chance? Would you hurl him back? Would you hurl him back in prison? Would you get rid of his anonymity?
The thing is, okay, let's say that we had omnipotence, so we'd been monitoring his whole time since he's been out of prison. I think with Venables, he's proved more than once he is a danger to society.
Yes.
So he deserves that solitary. Well, they were both involved, though. I think, the trouble is now, if I literally came down to my power, I was the judge, jury, and executioner. Judge, Judy, and executioner.
Yeah, but that'd be more apt.
Then if you could see, I don't know now. Now he's been out a few years. If he's just getting on with his life and being a decent, upstanding member of society, don't know if I'd bother hauling him back. But I don't know. I'd make sure he's never allowed near kids or anything. And yeah, but he never gets really rich. He has sort of a day-to-day life eating baked beans.
So you wouldn't haul him back in just for the sake of it, then?
I don't know. I think this decision should have been made when they were 10.
Should they have had... Should their names never have been released? Ever? And then that way there probably wouldn't have been this. Because there has been... a similar case in England over the last few years. That some Edlington, there was these kids tortured. They weren't killed, but they were tortured, and the identities of the killers have never been released.
Well, no, I think people deserve to know, but then I think the only way you can avoid that problem is by keeping them both in solitary confinement for the rest of their lives. I know that's at the taxpayers' expense, but I don't want them out functioning in society, but we have a right to know who they are if they are out in society.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a strange one because, like I said, I don't. It's very difficult. There's no conclusive answer to the problem. Well, actually, I think we've got as close as you can in permanent incarceration for Venables. And not the incarceration which is currently being dished out by the state in England, which is comfortable cell, PlayStation, TV, game of pool.
Yeah, no, fuck that. It should just be in one room with one single bed, one pillow. Very basic meals every day. Mashed potato, water.
Bit like, when you see Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
And he's in that cell, and it's just got a glass front, and there's very little in there. Just a sink and a toilet. Never allowed out. That's prison, isn't it? That's what prison should be, not fucking cushy. But saying that, though, some of the prison documentaries in the US, they don't look like very pleasant places at all, but it's a bit different in England, and this is what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we have gone on for far too long. 48 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I think that's enough harrowing conversation for one.
Yeah, I need cheering up. I'm going to go and watch The Room, I think.
Good choice.
Have you got any sort of closing comments?
No, I'm going to get out of that mindset now. So I'm just, I think, like I said, I think we hit the nail on the head. Permanent incarceration in a not decorated cell was the only good solution.
Yeah, I agree. Right, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for joining me, Adam, even though we were supposed to end it anyway, but we have now. So thanks, guys. I'm sure this might stir up a few talking points. So leave any comments, and I'll speak to you soon.